Hello, everyone. Hey, Peter, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I am very excited about this wonderful conversation we're about to have. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, same. We did a podcast about a month ago maybe or
Yeah,
2
sounds
months
right.
ago. Yeah, and so the podcast is out there. We'll talk about that here in a little bit, but yeah, super excited to do the live event. So we're just going to give folks just
Fun.
a little bit more time to gather and then we are going to jump right in on this Wednesday almost afternoon.
Sounds good.
Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time. We are going to talk about a really fun subject if you're a nerd like us. What does it mean to operationalize GRC? What is that? Why is that? Is it even a thing? Like all of the above. Peter, again, thank you so much for taking the time to join. I've known you for quite some time now. I know you are very committed in this space and obviously top of your game. So super excited to be cracking this open with you.
Well,
A
thanks for having
few,
me.
of course. Just basically what this says is questions. We want your questions. So feel free to put them in the chat as we go. And if it makes sense to the conversation, we'll jump in right there at the moment. And then we're going to be talking about some really awesome stuff today. You can see some of the topics there. But without further ado, let's just jump right into this bad boy. Okay, operationalizing GRC. Why in the world is this a thing now? You can see this is what we see at Hotman Group is customer pressure. Customer pressure is so immense right now. I like to tell the story of, yeah, we all have speed limit signs when we drive our cars, but how many of us honestly really look at those? And then how many of us really abide by them? So regulation is one thing, but people are people. Regulation, they kind of pressures things, kind of doesn't, but it's also slow. Regulation is like so slow to change. So
It's true.
cyber is way too fast for regulation, but customer pressure, now you're jacking with my revenue. Oh, you just got my attention now. Peter, are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that GRC is one of those things that's been easy to kind of mentally set aside as like the disruptor. It's that thing that we might need later and we don't need to worry about too much now. But if you think about everything else that happens in cybersecurity, it's really taken on a lot of the IT operations leads of, trying to have it be a very operation centric sort of thing. You're working sunrise to sunset, and you're finding ways to be able to make it more automated and process driven. And really, GRC can't stay in that off to the side sort of thing and just interject once in a while. It has to become
Yeah.
operational too.
Yeah, it's tied directly to revenue. I mean, customer pressure shows up in the form of, hey, we're interested in using your service, your company, your platform, whatever it is, but I need to know that I can trust you with my data. I need to know that I can trust you with what I value most. So it shows up in those dreaded questionnaires that everybody hates. It shows up in, are you ISO? Are you SOC 2? Are you high trust? Are you fill in the blank alphabet soup here? That's how it shows up, and that is the core of what GRC does. Unfortunately, it's still, I mean, you tell me if you agree and you're seeing the same thing, Peter, but unfortunately, it's still seen as kind of a paper pushing admin type exercise. And oh my gosh, that's just not what it is.
Yeah, I agree. You really do have to try to strike a balance. Everybody would like to be able to arrive on a point of consensus, but when you're stacking business priorities and initiatives, you have to try to balance them with the importance of doing it correctly. So when we say shift left, it's not just about coding, it's about embedding the risk aspect and the compliance aspect into the process, and that gives you the governance that makes GRC rounded. But if we make it just a pressure valve at the end or an exercise where we say, here's a SOC 3, go away,
Yeah.
it doesn't really provide the assurance that is the intent.
No, that's exactly right. There's a lot of hubbub out there about, SOC 2 and the deterioration of it, which is very unfortunate. And because it is a trust mechanism is the harsh reality. But yeah, this is tied directly to revenue. It can stall deals, it can accelerate deals. It's not a paper pushing exercise. And I love what you said. You used the R word. And I love to say this. If I could visually show it, we should do that for one of these. The GRC, like they're all the same size, but in the world, the C is like the whole page, and the R is like almost non-existent at the very bottom, teeny tiny. And then G just has a big question mark on top of it. Huh? What is that? Is that important? And so
I
I
think you're
love
right.
I love that you brought up risk. Why is that important?
Well, I think, when you come to risk, the knee jerk that you hear a lot of the times is the business initiative is too important to worry about it, so let's just accept it and move on. And when we look at governance, everybody defines it a little bit differently. So you hear a lot of people kind of going, "Oh, well, we've got a policy for that," and that's not exactly governance, is it?
Yeah. You said something that's really interesting, and this is why this aligns to the business is risk. I know you're going to chuckle when I say this, but risk postures are not the same across companies. That's why this is not a check the
It's
box,
true.
automate, because exactly what you just said. You take a SaaS company, for example, that's very market driven, that's in a highly competitive space. Their risk tolerance, quite frankly, is legitimately higher. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But be smart around making good decisions that align to that versus you take staunch banking or you take some other industry. Their risk tolerance legitimately is much lower, but they also move slower. They're maybe not in as much of a competitive space. And because of that, yeah, their risk posture looks a little different. And exactly what you said, we're not just doing this as a sideline exercise, but it's embedded in how we code, how we develop products, how we make purchasing decisions, all of the above.
Yeah, I agree. And when we're getting those questionnaires answered, you also have to consider what is the scope of that answer, because they're defining a boundary when they're providing you that answer, and maybe that's not always clear.
Yeah, I think that takes us directly into this illusion of operational GRC. So let's debunk this. What does that show? Debunking myths or something like that. But let's talk about what this is not. So unfortunately, and this has been the hindrance and the extreme hurt to the SOC 2 mechanism is we have this notion of operationalizing means you buy a tool and you look for green and you're good and you move on. But you said something really interesting called this little notion called scope. Oh, wait, what? I'm sure you can tell stories too, but I can tell stories of seeing these platforms and seeing green check marks, but when you dig into it, oh, not all your endpoints are in the platform. Oh, you left this location out. Oh, you included people that weren't relevant or you excluded people that were relevant. Oh, yeah. So what does this green check mark really mean? Is that operationalizing GRC, Peter?
I thought that
I
one
think
might
the
be
laugh
rhetorical.
is,
It's not.
oh my gosh, that's
But I
funny.
mean, the other question is how many GRC tools are there, right? Because it's
Over
entirely possible that,
500. I know the answer.
and in
Over
an
500.
organization, I might have more than one. So
Right?
sometimes some of
Absolutely.
the risk is over in a different one, and some of the risk is in another. And if they can't know about each other, well, what's the value of having either of them, essentially?
Yeah.
Because it depends on who you are and what your objective really is. If your objective is all green, hey, maybe that looks really great. And maybe when you're going to the board, it makes the conversation really easy. And that's a temptation. But that's what ethics is a little bit about, right? If we have
Ooh.
integrity in the
Ooh.
mix, then all green shouldn't help you sleep at night. It should keep you awake.
Yeah, it
Because
really
as an
should.
auditor, that's the first thing that makes me say, hey, I see some smoke.
Yeah. That's a really great point. You know, your
Thank you.
best my yeah, that's an excellent point. My opinion are the best risk practitioners in an organization are typically your cyber people because that's how they think. They're bad things and they're trying to work to mitigate it. Now it's not necessarily a comprehensive program at that level, but they're thinking very like, hey, there's risk and we need to mitigate that. And so that's really important. So as a practitioner, you're right. Green makes me nervous because I know fundamentally there is no such thing as perfection. There is no such thing as zero risk. And there is no such thing as absolute maturity. And there is no such thing as static environments, internally and externally. The company is changing, the tech stack is changing, the people are changing, the world is changing, the bad actors are changing. Green is a very dangerous false sense of security in that regard. I actually want to see where my yellow and my red is. And if things look green, I want to push for where the next yellow and red are because that's where I want to dig into.
Well, I think that's usually where my first filter is, right? I start with, okay, that's nice. What is the red and what is the yellow? But I'm not suggesting that the business or the app teams aren't sensitive to risk either. There's enterprise risk that involves more than cybersecurity, but it all follows the
Yeah,
same playbook if it's in sync.
that's
So if we're
right.
looking at this, I'm not saying that everybody needs to be engineery persnickety. We don't need to go ahead and try to make things worse than they are and as red as it can be. You got to try to find a balance, and that's where GRC truly
Correct.
operationalizes, in my mind. You're trying to strike a fair chord that has a fair agreement to be able to determine what you're going to do about it, and the point of finding them
Yep.
is to try to manage that risk.
Yep.
So if we're shuffling about scope and we're hiding findings and we're putting things in other systems and we're showing auditors different boundaries and we're worried about our internal audit and what they might cause, which how many times do you hear that? Oh,
Oh
internal
yeah.
audit found something. Oh, I hate those guys. Don't hate those guys. They're your business partner.
Oh
You
yeah.
want that
They are your
extra level of
partner.
assurance. It's really important that you have a good relationship with your internal auditors. They're not the enemy. They're helping you before the external auditors get there.
Yeah, I love
So
it.
find the stuff and put it in there, but figure out what to do about it and then agree on how risky is it really. And that's the metric where like the enterprise can get on board and you can try to refine the message. And maybe it is yellow, it's not red. And that might be okay. There's a lot of different reporting metrics that we can put into it once we know what the risk is that will afford more actionable insights. And that's really the metric that everybody wants.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, you're right. Security people tend to be naysayers. You can't come, especially at executives, and be like, everything's red. We're doomed. They don't even know how to process that. We had one client a few years ago and they had like hundreds and millions of vulnerabilities. I'm not even kidding. But there was a lot of duplication in all of that as well.
Sure.
Because high availability environment is gonna a vulnerability is gonna propagate. That's what it does. And so if you can't like clearly articulate, here's the one or two or three things, Mr. or Ms. Executive, we need to focus on. And I normally tell our clients, like, you don't go with more than 10 items, and even that's a big deal. But you're constantly driving risk improvement across the organization and constantly driving maturity in incremental organic ways based on budget, resources, all of those other things. But yeah, certainly not hiding anything. And it's funny you mentioned internal audit. I come out of banking and I know people say it's like an old antiquated concept, but I still love the concept of the three lines of defense because it changes the mindset that yeah, the internal audit people are not they're not against me. They are here to protect me so that when I go to external audit and regulators, I'm in a much better, more defensible position. So yes, we should obviously let them keep their independence, their objectivity, of course, but we should treat them as partners. I love that you brought that up.
Thanks. I mean, every observation, every finding is a conversation opportunity. Sometimes we may say, this looks like a high to me and it's absolutely missing. And the answer might be, well, that person just didn't give you the piece that you needed. Here you go.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
sometimes that conversation, that back and forth diffuses it because you're not worried about that there is a finding. You're not worried necessarily
Correct.
about what the rating of the finding should be because that's not where the message should rely. Instead, you're worried about the nuances, the details that allows you to be able to get what are we doing about it and how much is this going to cost me in time and money. And
Yeah.
I've made it to slide 2 before I said AI. So,
Good
so
job. That's great.
thank you. But that's where AI is a great tool, right? Because at the
Yep.
core of it, we've got large language models and we're doing data analytics. And data analytics used to be something that the data scientists did over in some closet somewhere, and we didn't need to worry about it.
Yep.
But we need to worry about it now because that's what helps GRC professionals stay alive. We need to be
Yep.
able to know how to use the tools that make us more efficient. Yeah,
Oh,
the market's
100%.
overcorrected. We've jettisoned a whole bunch of GRC professionals out into the unemployment, and that's a terrible thing. but it will right size, and you'll be able to find ways to be able to renew your skills in applicable ways using AI to help support you. Now, that Super Bowl commercial from Anthropic, the idea that we can all become slackers and, we'll just press the easy button. Yeah, that one graded me pretty badly. That's the wrong message, right? You can't go ahead and say this is so easy that it's going to replace me when nobody needs me. And if we had a million more apps, everything would be better.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But if we use it smart as a tool and we can drive those metrics that help the insights of GRC be actionable, then it's not as painful as it might sound on the surface.
Yeah, it's I thank you. I love that you brought that up. And yeah, AI, it's a thing. Like we should talk about how to use it smartly. And it doesn't replace people. I look at it like this. I can build a table with a screwdriver or I can buy a screw gun and then I can build maybe 2 or 3 tables in the same time. So it's the same
Absolutely.
concept. If I learn to use the tools at my disposal, maybe instead of being so much of a paper pusher and worrying about passing audits and moving this to over here, I actually have a bandwidth to bring this amazing human brain to the table and this GRC skill expertise and security expertise to be like, let me actually dig into this stuff now. Let me actually figure out what's really broken versus just, I'm just trying to keep up to pass audits on any given day. So that's what's exciting, I think, about this field is what AI really can bring to the table there.
I agree. And one thing that I don't know if you noticed of those Super Bowl commercials, did you notice that the outcome always had the human go, there it is. We can't take the first answer. How many times has AI told
Oh,
me,
yeah.
I've just done that thing you asked, and here's this
Uh,
amazing detail of what I've corrected, and then you open it and it's an empty
yeah,
spreadsheet.
that is correct. Yeah. No, that's exactly right. It is by no means
Quality
perfect.
assurance always matters.
Yes. Yes, quality assurance does always matter, especially in this. And it goes back to what we talked about with the, big green check mark. It's the same mistake. Like, oh, I
It
see the
is.
big green check mark, I'm good. Oh, well, AI did this, so I'm good. No, the minute you think it's good, you stop watching it, and that's when it goes south. And that's when it goes
Absolutely.
sideways. So
And I bet that has
governance.
something to do with third party risk too.
It does, exactly. Well, and
Again,
then
that's
you
not.
you said you said something a second ago, and so, to bring it back to, like, what's driving all of this is third-party risk, which, of course, is our, customers bugging us on questionnaires and all this other stuff, which is awesome, is pushing the needle. But I say this often. They're not asking, "Hey, can you pass this audit? Hey, do you have the big green check mark?" That's not what they're asking. They're asking, am I safe with you? That's what they're asking. They're not asking it that way, unfortunately. And so then that's where you get all the checkbox. But in good stewardship, we need to understand what they're truly asking. And then all of this good stuff that we've been talking about, that's what you do that then you satisfy your customers with. You don't fill out questionnaires as fast as you possibly can and, oh yeah, we passed this audit as fast as we possibly can. Like if they knew we were doing that, it's worthless, right? That's not what they're asking.
Yeah, I think so. But I like that you kind of got on the idea of being on the same page, because definitely there is a little bit of talking past each other sometimes, and a lot of times I find that that happens because of a misunderstanding or misapplication of consistent terminology. I remember when I was doing a third party risk assessment of one of our vendors, and I had the simple question that you might expect of, how do you handle inactive accounts? And they explained, well, we don't have anybody, but we have a term process, and the term process takes care of those inactive accounts. I go, great, the term process, I totally understand. But what I'm talking about is an inactive account. Let's say somebody takes temporary leave and they push back and they said, well, they're coming back, so they're not inactive. Right? So it takes a little bit of time to be able to get through to a consistent definition. And one of those things we mentioned earlier, what is governance? As you have that
Yeah.
conversation, a lot of times people have a different definition. So getting to a
Yeah.
consistency of terms and getting to a consistent understanding of what you really need is half the trick.
Yeah. And that's why I say this is not paper pushing admin. That's not what this role is. It's what you just said. So you mentioned like doing an actual third party risk analysis, like actually having a conversation, like actually talking through third party risk. I'm being very
Absolutely.
cheeky, but that is what the exercise is. It's not
Every
to get
time
a
I got a
question.
questionnaire in, we always have to review it and then have a
Yes,
call with them to walk it through, where we have any need for clarification. Just like any
correct.
good audit, really.
It's basically a mini audit. That's exactly what it
Hmm.
is. But it requires a certain skill set. And so what I hear, and I'm sure you'll echo the same, or I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I hear from the CISO side of the camp, well, the customers, they don't know what they're asking. It makes no sense. You got some junior intern over there. They have no idea what it is. So then they discount the process, unfortunately, on that side. And so then it propagates to look something like, well, if they're not asking the right questions and they don't know what they're talking about, well, guess what? I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm just going to throw junior intern on my side and just sling a bunch of answers back, and we're just going to checkbox each other to death, and that misses the whole point of the exercise. So both sides are frustrated, quite frankly.
I can see that. I mean, I've worked both sides of the table in-house and as a third-party consultant. And, I think one of the things that, as people work for efficiency and, profit margin, you often see some big box shops do is, the senior director, manager, partner, whatever it is, they come in and they do the razzle dazzle and the initial kickoff, and then they leave you with the fresh out of college junior like analyst
Oh yeah,
who has
that's
a
rampant.
checkbox and they're working down the sheet and going, well, what about this? And they don't know what your answers are. And it's no fault of them. They don't
Nope.
have the support
Correct.
and the training to be able to do any different. So yeah,
Correct.
that can totally give that kind of perception. And maybe the answer is the more senior resource should be a little bit more involved. They don't necessarily need to be there for everything. I've taken junior
Correct.
analysts and said, go do this documentation review.
Correct. Yep.
But I'm right sizing, where I'm plugging them in, and I still
Yeah.
have a quality assurance process on what they put out. Because
That's
if we
amazing.
can't do like a random sample of everything that they've come back with, or however you want to go about doing it, and find that they're hitting the right point consistently, well, then it's no different than taking the first answer AI gave you.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And yeah, that's fair feedback. It's nobody and everybody's fault, quite honestly. You can't blame the junior intern. It's not their fault because they should be in a structure of proper training and proper support with, we come from accounting type principles where you have layers of QA, where you have that senior plugged in when it needs to be plugged in. Like that's what you do to get good quality outputs on the other side. And
Absolutely, you're a
so,
team.
yeah. And so the whole point of this is that customers are exposing it with their pressure, but how we deal with that exposure is showing us that we're not doing a good job operationalizing these practices internally. And that's what that's really highlighting. So the pain that companies feel and the different answers and the one-offs and all of that that they're feeling is because there's something missing. And the thing that's missing is you have to operationalize all this. So here's some items on the screen there of where this thing really breaks down in the real world. What's one that resonates most with you that you've seen? Not to put you on
you
the
know,
spot, but put you on the spot. Yes.
they all resonate with me. I don't know which one I want to pick. You want to pick one
Oh
for me?
man. Go for it. Pick the ones you want.
I don't know. Um, let's go with security owns controls. I think that one's a pretty decent myth right there, and let's try to figure out, at the start, what do you mean by control, right? Because I think when I see that, you mean cybersecurity control, but there's other controls in an enterprise,
That's
and the
correct.
enterprise risk people will jump up and tell you that, and so will the
Yes.
financial auditors.
Correct.
So you have more than one control at any point. So getting a sense of your controls and where it presents risk, well, it quickly bubbles out of cybersecurity GRC and into an
Yeah.
enterprise risk function. And just like
Yeah.
you need a good
Should.
partner in internal audit, you need a good partner in enterprise risk. Because when you start misusing terminology, and how many times have I heard an auditor tell me about a risk when they really mean a threat? Happens all the time. Or vulnerability. Well, that vulnerability is a risk, but is it?
or or failed controls that they state as risks. I'm like, that's a failed control. That's not a risk. What's the risk? Yeah. The risk
Right.
is that people don't do their security awareness training. Nope, not the risk. That's a failure, is what that is. So, yeah, you're
Sure.
right. Definitions is part of this. Obviously, you can see just on the screen, it's all siloed, and that's where it breaks down. Is
Yeah,
nobody
I agree
really
with that.
owns the full thing. And then I love that you keep bringing up enterprise risk. You've said it a few times, which is making me laugh because if we're being honest, Peter, you've worked with a lot of different companies as I have. How many
Yeah.
companies really have one, an enterprise risk function, period. And then
Right.
two, one that is actually with any sort of maturity and cohesiveness across the organization. And then one that's designed for a risk purpose, not a passing audit purpose. Like it's
Sure.
crazy.
Well, have you ever seen an organization try to get an enterprise risk taxonomy?
Yeah.
Everybody's got a difference, right? So if we think about
Yes.
threats or risks and vulnerabilities might be one, whether we have it or not.
Yes.
That was my original point. It wasn't that the vulnerability you actually have isn't a risk.
Yeah,
Just
right. No, I get it.
right. But
Uh,
if we look at that, we find that not only is there a problem with terminology, but there's also a problem with reading two different people reading the same thing coming away with a
yeah.
different understanding, which happens all the time with those compliance frameworks.
Yeah.
Somebody who knows the compliance framework might read the control and entirely know what it means. Well, somebody
Yep.
else can read the same verbiage and come away with entirely different understanding. It happens all the time with PCI because you forget about, well, that requirement really matters because of what it's being inherited for the parent and where it sits within the process of having card data.
Yeah.
So, when you see these different things, there's a stack rank, but there's interdependencies and relationships that have to go back and forth.
Yeah.
And, I think that if you have different people measuring risk differently in the organization, they each have different grids, they each have different aspects to how they've done their analysis. It's very hard to try to be
Yeah.
able to explain why your cybersecurity high is the enterprise is low, is internal audits medium.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And we want to value those different perspectives, like legal.
Absolutely.
Legal has a perspective. They're attorneys typically. They have a
Sure.
perspective I do not have. So I don't need to devalue their perspective, but to the
Yeah.
point, it needs to be cohesively aligned. And this is why I say, what is GRC? It is really building, implementing, and running the program, the security program, and potentially the enterprise, how that aligns to the enterprise for the organization, because that is the glue that brings all of this together and makes it work as one.
That sounds a lot like governance.
Oh, you mentioned governance a minute ago, and we talked a little bit about AI, and I did want to say this. I'm glad you brought it up again. The more we automate, the
Yeah,
more governance is important. And
absolutely.
people, to your point, people don't even like, what is governance? Huh, wait, what? And it's
Yeah,
important. It's like it cracked me up when AI started coming on the scene. Oh my gosh, AI governance. There every week there was a different webinar about, oh, there's this brand new thing. No, there's not this brand new thing. It's called governance. And you
yeah,
should be doing that with all of your organization. People,
absolutely.
locations, technology, all of the above. So go for it, Peter. Talk about the
Well, I
G,
mean,
the poor G that gets no press.
absolutely, because the compliance stuff and its checkboxes are a little bit more sexy. But I think if we go
I
ahead and we
think you just
consider,
had security people shudder on the phone, like, they're not sexy.
yeah, I know. Depends on who you are, I guess. But if we think about it, if policy establishes the rule book,
Yes.
having the process and methodology defined allows you to have, the let's call it the playbook. So it's entirely possible that enterprise risk, cybersecurity, and internal audit may conclude on different ratings.
Yeah.
What we're saying here isn't so much that that's a bad thing. Everybody should call it a high. Instead, it's that if the methodology, the playbook that is how that they arrive at that point is not siloed, then we can explain how one gets from the other to the next, and how they interrelate and arrive at something that really protects the organization.
You are rocking the boat, that turning the apple cart, whatever that phrase is. But you're so let's just camp on policy for a second.
Sure.
How many times have we heard, "Oh, I can just download that. I can just download that. Oh, everybody has it. It's the same. I can just download that."
It's just a
And
template.
yeah, exactly. Are what in the world are you thinking it is? Because I know I can just download it and be done in 5 minutes. I have literally had people tell me that. I'm like, I don't even know how to
Sure.
unpack that with you. So, but you're right. And that's exactly how I frame it is we're all playing a game. We ideally want to play one game, not, if an organization has 500 people, if you don't have governance, you're playing 500 games. Or you might be playing 350 games because you have little pockets of people that kind of agree on what the rules of the day are. And then the rules change and you don't know it changed. It changed over here and it didn't get disseminated over here. Like, oh my gosh, that's what governance is. It's huge to keep everybody on the same playing field. Yes, what are we calling things? How are we calling that? To your point, you call it a high, I call it a low. Great. We don't discount either's opinion, but let's come together and let's talk about that. And then do we have a common playbook that we're both playing by, or are you just making up what you think and I'm just making up what I think, and we're not even playing the same game? And there's
Well,
the problem. Yes.
and that's interesting because if we think about every game's instructions,
Yes.
it always starts with one thing that we frequently come away with and going, let's not worry about that, and it's the objective.
Yeah.
Why are you playing the game? What are you trying to arrive
Oh,
at?
I
Are you
love it.
just trying to pass go for $200, or are you trying to get a monopoly?
It's correct.
So as we go ahead and we try to figure out, what is our objective, that's where that integrity part comes in. Because if we do a little bit of political theater, then we want all green because it makes everything easier and you look good.
Yeah.
But you're only going to be good for a little while because eventually that's going to come back and bite you. So we have to have a shared objective, and that's when you hear organizations spend a lot of time going, well, we got to refine the mission statement and the vision statement. We got to set up our annual goals, and they spend a lot of time crafting that language. And it all comes out in the beginning of the year. They have the presentation, everybody looks at it and they go, yes, and set your goals around those, and we'll all be successful. And come March, we've thrown all of that out the window and forgotten about it because it doesn't matter anymore. We got heads down and we're working on the most priority initiative and that new one that just came up. It's not to say that on January 1, we know what's going to happen come August 1. We need flexibility. We need to be able to
Yeah.
adapt. But if we build our governance program so that it can adapt and we can document the decisions along the way, then it takes some of the mystery out of it. And you don't need to worry about that theater anymore because we're on the same team.
Yeah. That is so good, Peter. Just so, so
Oh,
good.
thank you.
The objective of the game. And that, how does that show up in organizations? Well, what are the objectives of the business? Is the business looking to branch into hospitals? Okay, that's going to change the GRC and the cyber game. Is the business looking to branch into healthcare? Are they looking to close deals quicker? Like, are they just big cash cow, steady state? That's all going to change what we do in security and then how we build the program around that in GRC to align to that. The other thing it does is, I know you hear this all the time. I hear it all the time. Well, the executives don't get it. They don't understand what we do. They don't know why we need this money. They don't know why we need this funding or these people. Like, they don't get it. Right, because you're playing a game over here with your own objectives that is, oh, I just want to get part place. That's winning to me. Okay, but the business is wanting to have the monopoly. Like, that's what they want. Meanwhile, security wants the whole north wing. So you all are playing on different objectives. Not that they're mutually exclusive, but they don't cohesively align together. And if people would like think in terms of that, that's really where you start to operationalize this thing. It is a model. It is not a tool. It is not an audit. It is not any of those things. It is truly an operating model around. I love what you just said. What game is the business playing? What objectives do we have? How do we align to play the same game? And then what are our objectives that then support their objectives? And oh, theirs just changed. All good.
Yeah.
We will adjust ours.
Well, let's think about it. If we were going to acquire a business, Would we be comfortable with taking their SOC 2 and then signing off and saying due diligence was done?
Now I'm going to laugh at that question like you've laughed. Like, excuse me, let me go
Yeah,
on mute. No, absolutely not. First thing I would do, in all honesty, is I would look and see who the audit firm is, and that would decide how serious I take this thing. I just
true.
recently saw um, I want to say it was a HIPAA compliance report that was entirely out of one of these tools. I immediately went, nope, don't care.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
yeah,
there was one of the big four recently delivered a report where all the references were hallucinations.
yeah,
So, human in a loop is going to matter. Quality assurance always
correct.
comes back to that. But the SOC 2 is our starting point, and the due diligence generally has something more to it. So if we're looking to be able to do that business acquisition, and we'll just go ahead and stay with that for a second.
Sure.
There's a strategic reason why we think there's a fit. There's a strategic reason why we think that it's going to make us more profitable, more successful, grow us according to our goals.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's
right.
where the business is saying, this is important. We got to do it. It hits our goals. Without it, somebody's going to be upset.
Yeah,
Okay, fair enough. So when GRC comes in and says, hey, I found a bunch of risks that you should worry about, oftentimes that's heard as just, oh, there's those people again. They're causing a whole lot of friction. I need to get this deal across the line. I don't have time to worry about that. But
yep.
that really translates to damn the torpedoes,
Oh,
right? And I don't think that's the thing that they really want either, because after the
no.
acquisition, when those risks are realized, it's not going to produce what you think. It's going to cost you a little bit more.
Yeah,
So at least know where those landmines are so
yeah,
you can be able to try to find your way across the field and maybe get rid of a few along the way,
yeah,
but you don't step on them repeatedly and then call it strategy.
yeah. Yeah, and it goes both ways, Peter, because if we're not doing our job in security and GRC to not be the stoppage and the slowdown, then
Yeah.
that's on us. And so, and then again, this is where again, it's nobody's fault, it's everybody's fault because then you're right, the revenue side of the house, oh, these people again, seriously, you're messing up my deal. So they need to stop that. But on the flip and recognize that this stuff is serious, but on the flip side, we can't always be the naysayers and oh, this is going to take us 3 weeks to do. And it shouldn't, quite frankly, because again, this goes back to the operationalized aspect. If everything is properly defined, governance, and properly owned. Oh my gosh, ownership sometimes is the hardest part of this stuff is who owns this? Not me, not me. Okay, ownership is not owned. And then we're doing stuff and we're defining those activities and we're holding people accountable and monitoring. Then when that questionnaire and that revenue cycle comes along, it's like, I got this. I know where to go. I know what to go look
Yeah.
at. And oh, they asked a question that, ooh, okay, to your point, they asked a question that's actually one of our yellow. Okay, we're gonna have to think about. So then our time can be spent on that versus busy, 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 just busy work getting this done, and then being seen as the slow points and the stoppage. So that
Absolutely.
again is why this operationalizing it is so critically important.
Well, and that brings you back to the idea of cybersecurity having operationalized already. Because if we consider that the whole Shift Left initiative was the idea of getting embedded into the early design, and that's
Yes.
where we're going to bring our architects, and that's where we're going to bring our application security engineers, where are the risk people?
Yeah,
Where are
that's
the
right.
GRC professionals in that conversation? Because if we're coming in after all those other people have already decided, it's very hard to be able to have input about that. Hey,
Yeah.
that design that you had, that you just said that you don't need to worry about authentication for whatever that is. I'm just making it up. But,
Yeah.
maybe you should.
Yeah. But let's be real. What happens in the real world? Project, the PMO cycle, a lot of those will consider risk, but it's more the risk of the project. It's not risk to the organization, so it's a different lens. And then, if we're being really honest, in the change management process, which is intended to pick up risk, part of SDLC and part of change management, how does that normally show up? High, medium, or low? Check it in the change record. Oh, medium. Woohoo! Put my little text box. I'm good to go. Approved. I mean, seriously, that's it. Cab, how many
Yeah,
times now? Because of compliance, we're seeing more security people at least present at CAB because they don't want to fail their audit, for
yeah,
example. But
very
again,
good.
that's too late in the cycle. Unless in CAB we're talking about changes that are coming down the pipe, which some companies do that. It needs to be caught in the SDLC cycle. It needs to be caught over here. And it's not, it's risk to whatever is risk. So it's risk to the organization. It could be, I just had this conversation with a client yesterday, CMMC, you get your CMMC certification. Well, guess what? Don't go do something that jacks with your scope. Like, be very mindful of that. And so that
Yeah,
needs to be embedded into the process now. And so that's that
absolutely.
lens of what you're talking about.
Well, that and a finding, be it compliance, risk, audit, however you like it,
Huh?
it's not stop the presses.
No.
Every one of them is not stop the presses, stop that change. No way, the risk person's spoken. That's not the way it should work. Right? It's just data for us to be able to do analytics on, to be able to
Yep.
arrive at something we're comfortable with how our path is to treat it. And it doesn't necessarily need to be treated today because, to the other side of the table's point, we're no more risky today than we were yesterday. But tomorrow I worry about.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point. Okay, so there's so many reasons why you operationalize this stuff. It's so many reasons why it's not just an admin check the box. So what is it really? I mean, we see it should tie to the business. We talked about some good stuff here, but what is it really to operationalize GRC? What does that really mean to you, Peter? Like, what would you tell someone?
Well, I think we might consider, that point of, the shift left bit. We might consider that point of cybersecurity SOCs, right? There's all those different touch points that cybersecurity has gotten very good at embedding into and working
Mhm.
with business
Yep,
owners and stakeholders. And internal audit has a chance to be able to publish out their audit plan and try to work with their stakeholders. And enterprise
yep,
risk is running the show quietly in the background.
yep.
But if cybersecurity GRC doesn't have a seat at the table and instead is coming along when there's a compliance effort or coming along when somebody's told them about it and managing a risk register and saying, hey, did you fix that one yet? No, we're going to accept it again. Okay.
Okay.
Then
Yeah,
you're not really managing risk. You don't really have governance. And
right.
do you have compliance? Maybe.
You have
Maybe it
passing
kind of depends on
audits.
how you scope it,
Depends.
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
think about your approach. Is your approach going to be one where you say, hey, the auditors are coming in and they're looking at this particular process. Here's all these relevant policies that are going to be part of the documentation request. Here you go.
Yeah.
Or are you saying, if it's not on your documentation list, I'm not giving it to you? And I know that you asked for the application security policy, but you didn't ask for the application security standards, so I'm not giving you that one. And if you made that latter choice, you got to ask yourself why. Because if you really protect anything, you shouldn't be scared about having anybody read your standard. You shouldn't be scared about anybody reading your process because if you maintain it, it's well documented. Those are the rules, and you should know what they are.
Yeah. Yeah. You
So
bring
there's
up a
no
really good,
harm.
yeah, you bring up an excellent point. Like, that's a symptom of a problem. So if audit scares you, that's a symptom. Because you're right. What would you like to know? We do everything with integrity. We've built and run a program. We built and are running a program. We're monitoring what we need to monitor. Yes, we're making sure our compliance is taken care of, but we've got proper governance. We're monitoring people. We're holding them accountable. What would you like to know? So that would be symptomatically different. The other piece of this is if it's a crunch time for audit, that's another symptom that what are you actually doing?
Sure.
Because this is a 365 exercise. This is not a one time a year exercise. So if it's a
Right.
crunch time, I know there's a little extra pressure in during audit, but fundamentally, just what you said, like what's the problem? You here, have all the policies. That's totally fine
Right. Because we
because
can't be scared of the finding. We should be happy to have the conversation because the conversation allows us to reach a consensus because at the end of the day, we're partners.
yeah.
We should have the same objective and then we're operationalized.
Yeah,
And the tools just support us for the ride, whether it be AI or
that's right.
GRC platforms. We configure them correctly, we get the aspects, and we write down how we did it.
Right. And we keep it there. It's not a one-time exercise either. So,
Right.
yes.
because it's continual improvement all the time. One of
All
the
the
first
time.
management theories that I read about was Kaizen, the idea of the Japanese methodology where we're saying we're continually improving it. And, I kind of latched onto that because I'm like, when's that not true?
Yeah.
Every time
Yeah.
I go and grill out back, I'm always trying to make it a little bit better.
I love it. That's awesome. It's true. I call it being coachable and teachable, and we need to stay that way our whole life. The minute you think you know everything, and the minute you think there's nothing else that someone else can possibly teach you or you can learn from, you're done. Like it's over. And it doesn't
Yeah.
matter if you're 20 or you're 80. It doesn't change. So I love that. And then you mentioned continuous improvement, which again, being a practitioner and being good stewards who operate in integrity, we should always be striving for continuous improvement. Incremental organic, I get it, but always moving the needle. And it should show up in more maturity as well. But companies, historically don't do a good job at really doing those maturity assessments and being honest about them. I see a lot of them that are just
Yeah.
threes across the board. I'm like, wow, yeah, you. Um, and then audits, now you take audit, which unfortunately is driving a lot of the behavior. How many times does an auditor say, hey, can you give me evidence that you've actually continually improved? How would you answer that question? It hardly ever comes up. High
Yeah.
trust tries to bake it in a little bit, but then you don't need it to pass, so nobody cares.
Well, and if we think about that earlier point of the all green dashboard, if that's the objective, you have to remember a lot of these dashboards now have an AI under the hood.
Yeah,
So the more that you jack around that data to try to make it go green, remember that hallucination thing? Well, you've just
yeah,
taught the AI the process that you want.
yeah,
And if it
yeah,
gives you if it tells you that it did a terrific job and here's the spreadsheet that you want with all these details that I got right, and you open it up and it's an empty spreadsheet,
yeah.
and that's the way it works today.
I
It's
know.
not just an easy button where I can close my eyes and be unemployed, but instead, it has to learn from actual data. And that means you need to have a human in the loop and quality assurance baked in. And you have to
Yeah,
be able to come to a point where you care about accuracy and integrity more than green.
yeah. No, that's exactly right. It truly is. I love, this is why I like you and we have great conversations because
Likewise.
integrity is really key in all of this. We are not just trying to pass the exam at the end of the course and then celebrate that. No, we're actually trying to learn something. We're actually trying to make it better. We're actually trying to operate in a way that we can sleep at night and we know we've done the best thing. It's not perfect.
Right.
And then, to your point, and I'm not trying to poo-poo tools because I'm a huge tech nerd. I love technology, but keep them in the right perspective. They are tools, to be clear. That is exactly what they are. And the more the tool does, the more the governance and the oversight needs to be. And so that's the piece. And then the
That's
world
right.
changes, we change, the tool changes, the company changes, everything
Hmm.
changes. And so if you don't have good processes to keep it right and up to date, then
Yeah,
you've missed the mark as well. And that doesn't happen one time at onboarding. So there is a right
absolutely.
way to adopt these tools. And so we put some items up there. The one that I want to most hit on, and I'm sure you have one as well, is you evaluate, especially GRC tools, because again, there are over 500, and it seems like every week I get a message of, "Hey, I want to show you my tool," and I'm like, "Okay, let's see your tool." And
Yeah.
so you can feature yourself to death with all the tools because they all, especially with salespeople, they all have, features and they'll tell you what you need to hear to give them money. But the
Yeah.
reality is, it all goes back to literally what we just said. This is a process, not a platform. So if I've developed a process, a program, if you will, for how I'm going to build and implement and run this across the organization, then I understand what I need out of it. What are my outcomes? What are the results I'm looking to get out of this? When I talk to companies who can't answer this and they're like, oh, well, I read about tool X and it does that. I read about tool Y and it does that. It immediately tells me you don't have a program. Like you don't know what this looks like across your organization because you don't shop for a tool based on a GRC tool based on the features. You shop for it based on here's what my program looks like or here's what I want it to look like. Now, what do I need that thing, that hammer, that screw gun to do to get me the outcomes that I need to get to? And that's how you choose these things.
Well, I think everyone always has some pros and cons and some limitations.
They do.
But
Yeah.
what I found is even the worst of them are only ever as good as you can figure it.
Ooh, I love that. It's not the tool's fault. every GRC tool salesperson out there went, yeah. Yeah. Often it's not the tool's fault. Yes, no tool is perfect. Just let's be realistic about that.
Mm,
No tool is perfect, hard stop. But you're right. The failure, we see it all the time because we see 3 and 4 GRC tools in a company and they think that one doesn't work either. It's the
mhm.
people aspect. It's the people in the
Yeah,
process. It's not the technology that's failing. You are, I 1000% agree with you.
thanks. I
So
just think, we got to remember, our job isn't to antagonize and make people look bad. It's just to be accurate and help.
it's funny you say that. Yeah, like none of this is personal. That's why I think metrics and tools and objective measures are so important
Yeah,
because I'm not picking on you. I'm not making this up. Like here's the data, here's the dashboard. This is what we're looking at. And by the way, yeah, I'm on your team and we're working to make this thing better overall because that is what our customers expect, whether they ask
absolutely.
that directly or not. And so that really is what we're doing. And people are huge to this. Like you just said it. Oh, got AI, so let's fire all these people. Well, one, when this is seen as nothing more than paper pushing, it's easier to make that decision. But GRC is a skill set, it's a profession, and for anybody who thinks it's something else, they need to take the time to educate themselves as to what this really is and this discipline that comes to the table. And so human brains and human drive and creativity and problem solving is so needed in this space.
Absolutely. And I think, it's sort of like a funny byproduct of it, but think about the last company retreat you were at. If you stood back and you looked at the groupings of people as they formed birds of a feather, did you find your auditors and your GRC people off in the corner? Because
It,
if they were way over there, then maybe that's not all that integrated,
Yeah, no, that's
right?
exactly right. Again, another symptom of the problem. There you go. That's perfect. That's another symptom. That's actually a really good thing, takeaway for people who are listening is look across your organization and what are things that you see that are symptoms. We live, especially here in America, we very much live in this space of, oh, your cholesterol's high. Wow, I have to stop eating that? Oh, yeah. Can I just take this pill? And so we kind of live in that. But high cholesterol, there is a genetic component. I don't want to get into a medical discussion, but it's symptomatic of something else. And so instead of just, oh, take this pill, hey, pass this audit, hey, check this box, instead of doing that, look at, ooh, I've got this symptom. What is this symptom telling me about the underlying state? If it's a genetic component, there's not as much I can do about it. So great, maybe that makes sense. But is there a systemic problem? Is there a way I live? Is there a way I eat? Is there a way I behave? Is there my mental state? Like
Sure.
there's so many other elements that is showing me that, hey, there's something that can really be improved here. That honestly goes back to what you said about the continuous improvement.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I think, you know, we're all humans. We all have our families and the things that we care about. So you want those trusted partnerships, particularly as a GRC professional, because working internally, at least, it's not a one off. And working as a third party, you probably like some recurring business. So you can't be a bull in the china shop and every time that you run into an audit, and you can't try to relish how bad you made people look.
Yeah,
It's not the point.
it's not. Yeah. Improvement is the point. Showing
Mhm.
consistent improvement is entirely. Yeah, and this is where the human element comes in. Like, okay, let's take AI for example. Has a lot of value. However, if AI serves up 1,000 things that need to be addressed, which that's all it's going to know to do, right? Then people can't action 1,000 things. Like humans just can't handle that. So then that's where you step into, okay, what are the 3 things or the 5 things that we really need to look at here? And so,
Sure.
that's what we would do. And so there's the lens of that. And that's why people are still so important. And then AI and tools, they only know what they know. So if you have a GRC tool, for example, that says, oh, all your endpoints are 100% perfectly managed, that tool, quite frankly, doesn't know that, oh, look at all these devices sitting on a shelf. Look at these BYOD that have failed to go through the process. Oh, we
Sure.
bought this device and somebody forgot to register it. Like it doesn't know that. Again, that's those layers of quality assurance. That's those layers of governance of how we build and play this game.
Well, I just heard all the data governance people cheer you on.
That's love
Absolutely.
it. That's
Absolutely.
fantastic.
Because
Very
garbage in,
nice.
garbage out.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Okay, so ownership. I want to talk a little bit about ownership. This is so critically important. Why? So one, from personal experience, ownership sometimes is the hardest thing. You said it earlier too, Peter. You said controls. What do you mean by that? Control. What do you mean by controls? Is that security controls? What do you mean by that? Great question. Excellent question. Who owns that? I tell companies all the time, the more you can push out, this is why you have a solid platform, a solid GRC platform, not one intending to show you a green check mark and pass an audit in 2 weeks. That ain't it. That's nothing in this discussion. You want a solid platform that you can actually push your control ownership out. You can push your risk ownership out. Peter, you might be sitting in who knows where, HR, legal, who knows, marketing, if it makes sense, whatever. And you own this thing. So my job is to train you of what you own. And my job is to give you a mechanism that's not going to drive you insane so that you can actually do what you need to do. And then when you fail to do what you need to do or you have problems, my job is to help you, hold you accountable, and get it where it needs to be. And so that's where, quite frankly, the platform is huge to ownership, in my opinion.
I agree with you. I think we're keeping those data governance people in the fold here because our
Love it.
our owner has, that depending on the model we're using, our owner has the responsibility to be able to say what it is and how it needs to be protected. Our stewards, oftentimes our cybersecurity ops, sometimes our system admins, are in charge of executing those controls and advising. And then we have, different layers, but let's just assume we go straight to a user base who's now going to use the data and populate more. Well, if we don't have a good framework and we don't have a clear delineation, we don't have a solid governance program to be able to continually monitor, reclassify, adapt, and adjust, then it breaks down under its own load very quickly.
Yeah.
So everybody has that active role, and we have to be able to work through that process and refine it and adapt and mature it so that we are able to stay engaged with the things that matter.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it goes back to repurposing attention. If I spend 80% of my time chasing people around, that means it's opportunity costs, right? That means I'm spending 80% of my time not doing something else.
Right.
And quite frankly, chasing people around, yeah, let's let the tool do that. And then we'll step in and escalate when we need. But to your point, what's our escalation game? How many times can a company, actually answer that question? What's our governance around escalation? What does that even look like? Like those are all things that need to be in place. So we've talked a lot about kind of where things are, and then when you get to, we're talking about this, what does that end state look like? I think that end state looks like some of these symptoms that you've brought up. The symptoms get less because we are addressing the symptoms. And then I think another big piece is people who are so valuable in this equation are actually able to do the things that they really should be doing. Like, instead of chasing you around, I'm going to let my tech stack do that. I'm going to design my escalation process to help me with that. And I'm actually going to look at the blank spreadsheet that you uploaded and be like, Peter, what the heck? Why is this spreadsheet blank? Well, I don't know. The AI did it. I'm going to spend my time on that. So let's have a conversation about how we actually do that. What else do you think the end state looks like in this? We're almost at time. Great dialogue.
Yeah. No, thank you. I've really enjoyed it, and I think this slide is wholly accurate. You know, I think we know the end state when we know the objective and we backtrack it through the rules.
Yeah.
So, every project manager that I know of has to always start from what's the deliverable, what's the goal, what are we finishing with, and then we have to work our way back.
Yeah, requirements.
So it's kind of the same thing, we got to be able to work our way
Yep,
backwards to be able to understand how to support it. And if we have solid rules, our policies, our standards, and the like, governance process, then we know how all of those things create the dependencies that help it to go. Because
yep,
GRC, just like other aspects of the business, should be an enabler.
yep. Absolutely. And that goes right into one of the questions. What are signs a company is buying tools to avoid making ownership decisions? And so that, you just mentioned requirements, but like just following the process. I literally said that to a client just a bit ago. Like, how do you make this decision? Well, I'm sorry to be textbook, but if we go back to SDLC, what are we trying to achieve here? What are the requirements? And then, how do we move forward with that? So that's really great. At Hotman Group, we do complimentary GRC health checks for companies who, hey, this is good stuff, but I don't know what our problems are. Are we in a good state? So reach out to us and get that scheduled. Peter, you were on the podcast that's posted out there. I think that QR code goes straight to the podcast that you and I had if someone's interested in that, but obviously subscribe. We have some future sessions coming up. So please sign up for those and look for those that interest you. But basically, Peter, I just want to say thank you so very much. Oh my gosh,
Well,
always a
thank you.
pleasure.
Likewise.
Amazing, amazing stuff and insight. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And thank you so much, everyone who popped in and took the time to listen. Have a great rest of your day.